and I have some instructions I need to read, so bear with me. Tonight, we will be conducting the first of a series of 3 public hearings on each of the 5 items that have been studied, debated, and approved for further consideration through this process. Each item will be presented one at a time. For each item, I will ask the attorney to read the title of the proposed ordinance and the question that would be asked if the item were approved for the ballot. I will then open the floor for public testimony for or against each item. If you wish to speak, you will come forward, and when it's your turn, you will state your name and residence for the record and be sworn in. The attorney will do the swearing in. You will have 3 minutes to make your comments. When there are no more comments, I will close the hearing, and at that time, the commission will deliberate on that issue and vote whether to move that issue to the next hearing. If an item is not approved for the next hearing, it will not be up for further consideration for the remainder of this process, and it will obviously not go to the ballot. Once the vote is completed, we will move to the next item until we have completed all 5 hearings on tonight's agenda. I also want to make sure it is clear that the CRC is not considering new or additional items at this time. We may consider changes to the 5 items being presented, but the time for presenting new issues has passed, and our job now is to take up and decide on the issues that have made it this far. I will now call upon the first item on the agenda for public hearing. That item is 2020 CRC-C1, Department Head Appeal. Mr. Foreman, will you please read the ordinance title and the ballot question for item 2020 CRC-C1?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Thank you. The ordinance is titled An Ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Columbia County, Florida, amending the Home Rule Charter of Columbia County, Florida, amending Article 4, Section 4.2, titled Department Heads, providing for a ballot question to be posed to the Columbia County electorate at the general election on November 3rd, 2020, providing for the ballot question form, providing for further authorization, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. If the ordinance is presented to the Board of County Commissioners, the ballot question would read as follows. Title, Department Head Right to Appeal Termination. Question, shall the Home Rule Charter of Columbia County, Florida be amended so that department heads shall no longer be able to appeal termination of their employment to the Board of County Commissioners? Yes for approval, no for rejection. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. The hearing being, I now declare the public hearing on this item open. Will there be anyone to speak for or against this item? If so, please come forward at this time. The hearing being open and seeing no one who wishes to speak for or against this matter, I declare the public hearing closed. It appearing discussion has, excuse me, Mr. Foreman, will you, we did that. Let me find that.
We now have to vote to see if we move.
Yeah.
At this time, you can ask for discussion or debate among the.
Will there be any comment, discussion, or debate from the commission before we go to the motion? Any comment or discussion on the first item on the board? This being concluded, I will entertain a motion at this time.
So moved. Second. Foreman.
Hold on, the clerk, and is it a motion to move it forward to the next hearing?
Yes.
Thank you. And if you could repeat for the clerk, Mr. Chair, to make
I make a motion, a motion for either for to move this to the next hearing or against moving it. What is
Or moving it to the next
it?
hearing.
Mr. Autumn makes a motion to move this to the next hearing.
I second the motion.
Mr. Foreman seconds.
Thank you, Chair.
I have a motion to CRC -C1 to move it to the next board hearing. All in favor, public hearing, excuse me. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
Motion carries. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 2020 CRC-2, County Manager Review. Mr. Foreman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and for the benefit of the public and the commissioners in attendance, the annual job performance evaluation form that was included in the agenda packet is the older form. The final form, as approved by this commission, was handed out to each of you, and there's additional copies at the front. Basically adds those last two categories at 14 and 15 relating to the manager's interactions. With that understood, the title of the ordinance on this item is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Columbia County, Florida, amending the Home Rule Charter of Columbia County, Florida, amending Article 2, Section 2.8, providing for a ballot question to be posed to the Columbia County electorate at the general election on November 3rd, 2020, providing for the ballot question form, providing for further authorization, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. The ballot question is titled Annual Review of County Manager. The question is, shall the Home Rule Charter of Columbia County, Florida be amended to require an annual review by the county commissioners of the county manager regarding his performance of duties set forth in the charter, and that the results of that review be presented to the public annually? Yes for approval, no for rejection. That's all, Mr. Chair.
I now declare the public hearing on this item open. Will there be anyone to speak for or against this item? If so, please come forward at this time. The hearing being open and seeing no one who wishes to speak for or against this matter, I declare the public hearing closed. Will there be any comment, discussion, or debate from the commission before we go to the motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Bowden.
it says that the county manager regarding his performance, Mr. Former, can it say his or her? I'm a sticker for just his.
Mr. Chair, that's duly noted. I apologize, Mr. Bowden, you brought that up before.
Okay.
We'll make that correction before the next hearing. I'll take care of it right now.
Mr. Chair, just clarification, please.
Mr. Stevens, go ahead.
In our packet, pages 18, 19, and 20, the insert replaces those in our pack. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct, sir. That's the updated form.
Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion on this issue? It appears the discussion has been concluded. I will entertain a motion at this time.
I make a motion, we move forward.
Mr. Owens makes a motion to move this item forward. It is
Second it.
second by Ms. Skinner. I have a motion and a second to move this item to the next public hearing. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you, ma'am. The next, item is 2020 CRC-C3 Ethics Code. Mr. Foreman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The title of the ordinance is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Columbia County, Florida, amending the Home Rule Charter of Columbia County, Florida, amending Article 1, adopting Section 1.9 to be entitled Code of Ethics, providing for a ballot question to be posed to the Columbia County electorate at the general election on November 3rd, 2020, providing for the ballot question form, providing for further authorization, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. The ballot question is titled Code of Ethics as proposed by the Charter Review Commission. The question reads, shall the Home Rule Charter of Columbia County, Florida be amended to provide for the enactment by ordinance of a code of ethics to prescribe standards of conduct for members of the Board of County Commissioners, county employees, and members of appointed boards and committees created by the Board of County Commissioners, no later than January 3rd, 2021. Yes for approval, no for rejection. That's all, Mr. Chair.
I now declare the public hearing on this item open. Will there be anyone to speak for or against this item? If so, please come forward at this time. The hearing being open and seeing no one who wishes to speak for or against this matter, I declare the public hearing closed. Will there be any comment, discussion, or debate from the commission before we go to the motion? It appears the discussion is not needed. I will entertain a motion at this time.
I make a motion, we extend or push this forward through the next public hearing.
Motion made by Mr. Autumn
Second.
to move this item to the next public hearing. Second by Mr. Germany. I have a motion to move it forward. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Thank you, ma'am. Next item is 2020 CRC-F as in Foxtrot 1, end of year funds. Mr. Foreman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Title is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Columbia County, Florida, amending the Home Rule Charter of Columbia County, Florida, amending Article 2, adopting Section 2.12 to be entitled Surplus Year-End Funds, providing for a ballot question to be posed to the Columbia County electorate at the general election on November 3rd, 2020, providing for the ballot question form, providing for further authorization, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. The question reads as follows: title, Use of Surplus Year-End Funds, and the question. The question as provided by the commission reads, shall the Home Rule Charter of Columbia County, Florida be amended to require that any excess or surplus money remaining at the end of a fiscal year not spent must be used according to the budget for the following fiscal year? Yes for approval, no for rejection. That question is as provided in the revised ballot question that was circulated before the meeting and that's available up front. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, sir. I now declare the public hearing on this item open. Will there be anyone to speak for or against this item? If so, please come forward at this time. Yes, sir. Mr. Williams, you recognize, sir.
On what this committee is recommending that we do different than what we're doing with the year-end funds now. Can I get a clarification on that?
Mr. Stevens?
Would you ask that question again, Mr. Williams? Would you ask that question again?
I need a clarification in layman terms what this committee is recommending and we do it year-end funds other than what we are doing with now.
Well, you know better than I as what's been happening, what's been done with it in prior years. If there was excess funds in prior years, you guys were not putting them back in the budget. You were spending them on other things, correct?
Yes. Here's what's happening now. 90% of the board, my calls, and I think this commission being a new commission can echo this, is roads. It's not about the jail. It's not about the clerk's office, the property appraisal office, or anything else. It's about roads. We do not have a designated revenue to keep up with the maintenance of roads. With the study we have done, we are almost $30 million behind in roads in Columbia County. Normally, we take the year-end fund and take those and fund roads in the construction of roads and the maintenance of roads within Columbia County. So, and basically 90% of that, those year-end funds, that is where it goes. Creating a revenue so we keep up with demand for the request for road maintenance and road construction.
But what we don't understand, and I'm just speaking for myself now, if anyone else wants to pipe in, what we don't understand is why that is not in the budget. You know that at the end of the year, you're going to have lots of road maintenance.
Well,
That should be better dealt with in the budget process.
Well, basically, here's what happened in the budget process, and I think Ben might have explained all this to you guys. when we get the state estimate on sale tax, gas tax, whatever taxes we going into the county coffers, by statute, we can only budget, we can budget everything to 5%. A lot of times they'll set aside 7%. The same thing with the tax collector or the property appraiser. When he give us an estimate on what we can expect the revenue to be generated to the county coffers through property taxes, we can only budget a percentage of that. So at the end of the year, if the estimates come in higher than what they are, the 5%, then that goes to year-end closeout. There's no way to budget 100% of the estimated money that's coming in. You just can't do it. By statute, you can't do that. So at the end of the year, you have that 5% that's set aside in a contingency from ad valorem taxes and all other revenue that come, including gas tax. So that's why you have that surplus at the end of the year. So at the end of the year, we do not have that dedicated source for road construction and road maintenance. And then that's where we take that money and do the maintenance of those roads.
But that surplus at the end of the year that you're referring to should come back through the Board of County Commissioners as a group, as a whole, and be discussed.
It does.
It's been implied and it's been talked about that it gets divided up unequally, equally. We're not sure. We're just making sure that this process is more in a budget conscious process. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we are doing here.
Well, somewhere, someone been led to believe that there's a slush fund that the county gets from this year-end money. That money, it goes into the general pot. And we have a priority list of roads to be done in each commissioner's district. And if 1, 2, 3 costs X amount of dollars, it goes that way to do that. It's nothing that we get among ourselves, and that money, those roads, those projects are approved by the Board of County Commissioners. Not one individual county commissioner, the whole board approved the work to be done.
Okay. Commissioner, can that money at the end of the year, if we move to the next year's budget, can that money be budgeted for those same roads and go into the next year?
Yes, sir. When that excess money comes, if it does not cover all the needs for the county that budget year, then it picks up from where the next fiscal year on the year-end closeout. And that's the only way we can do roads in this county. Because we don't have a dedicated source to do so.
I guess I'm confused, man.
Mr. Chair.
Chair recognizes Mr. Keith, please.
Mr. Williams, you said nearly
I can't hear you.
nearly 90% of the excess funds is used for the road. The report that we got from Columbia County, for 3 years, the Finance Committee looked at 17, 18, and 19. $16 million. $5,200,000. Transportation trust fund road. $11 million. That's not 90%. Well, general was 10 million, economic development was almost $1 million, and MSBU was 500,000.
And the reason why that is, they are restricted funds. So there are some funds that you cannot take and put here or take here. Those excess funds that are generated in that line item have to go back into that line item. Because they're restricted.
I get it, but if we're taking funds for roads, it would have been put in the transportation fund as a designated item. Now, if these records had shown that type of disparity in the fund, we would have probably maybe had a different decision on it. But when we look at what happened in the 3 years that we reviewed, that this is not the case, and we do feel the roads need more attention. But according to your own records, that didn't happen. Now, did they take some money out of general and do some roads with it? Maybe, I don't know.
Yes, sir.
We don't have that information.
Yes, sir. If that went back to general, you can take general fund money to do maintenance of road with. So all those year closeout, that money goes towards the the road maintenance of Columbia County. You take from this part, all this not restricted revenue, if you can't put in roads, then you put it in a road.
But
So if we do, we get written up at the end of the year with our water.
in our opinion, if roads were the primary issue, it would have been more put in the transportation fund. 1 year was 1.3, 1.5, 2.4 of 16.7. So that doesn't indicate to us that roads are the problem. Projects for roads are mentioned.
Yes,
And then you got another 1.2 in capital projects, 6.75 in capital projects, the jail, 230, welcome center, 100. I mean, High Falls Bridge, jail again, debt service was only 700,000 out of the 16 million.
but 5 of those things you named is transportation truck. I mean, it might be on a different line item, but it went for a transportation truck.
Is that what your capital projects were?
Yes.
I think it would be, it would behoove the commission to do something with their financial, instead of just saying a capital project, at least put in parentheses beside it, you know, a recreation center repair or a road project or something. Because when you just look at capital project, it doesn't tell us anything.
But in the line item itself, it would tell you that. When you go to look at.
This is what the county provided.
When you look at the entire budget, those things that we do, spend money on is listed. Because I would feel the same way if it was not. You start listing where capital projects are and what the amount of capital projects and where they are. I just don't want the county to be where we can't take care of road maintenance and our capital projects that we do out year ago.
I think the board agrees with you that roads are a major concern. I believe it's what, 60 million plus behind. And it's not that unusual for small counties. It's throughout the state. It's not just Columbia County.
Yes, sir.
I think, to be just perfectly upfront with you, I think the gist behind the year-end fund was you can take a budget and you can designate all these monies to be used, knowing that you won't probably use that much. Padding the budget, so to speak. If you're gonna have these year-end funds at the end of the year to do special projects, that's used to put wherever you want, instead of it being budgeted into the system to begin with. What we're trying to remove is that incentive to produce year-end funds. We'd rather see them budgeted in and used for the good of the county. And I understand there's going to be some excess funds, but the law requires 5%, I believe. But, and you will have some variation in taxes. You're probably not gonna have to worry about that this year, because I think they're gonna be. I would actually look to hold impact it's gonna be on Columbia.
We've had that discussion for that
I'm
reason.
sure you have, but we base our decisions on the information the county supplies. Year, there's no incentive to have much leftover funds, you'll do a better job of budgeting.
This is a board discussion topic. Let's finish with the public comment.
It's just one thing that I have a problem with what you said about leftover money out the budget. We know it's gonna be leftover. If we use that format and you have all these line items that you got stuff on each individual department, if they know that they're gonna be punished, at the end of the year or the next budget year by saving money, that's what happened to the state long years ago. They started cutting budgets because they had excess funds left at the end, and they started spending all the money. And then there wasn't no excess left. I mean, just a little bit left in a sense of peace. So I would never, encourage a department head, you spend everything your money, we don't want any excess money left at the end of the year. I just don't understand how we would want to do that. Well, now, but when we get off of our concern.
It would appear that within a year or two of attrition, that you'll have pretty good figures on each department. I would like to see more money budgeted to the transportation fund where it can only be used for roads. If it's in the general, it can be used for roads, and it can be used for a lot of things, and things happen, and people say, well, that sounds like a good idea, let's do this and that, but we're not accomplishing the road project that we want to do. I think we can budget more money into the transportation trust fund, somehow.
If that is what you're trying to accomplish, I'm with it 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
I mean, point blank. Because we need more money to transportation truck.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair.
Please state your name and your address of residency, sir. Be sworn in.
Howard Johnson, 174 Northwest Avenue in Lake City, Florida. Looking at this question, it is not going to resolve the issue, as Mr. Keith just explained, unless there is a designated budgeted item for transportation and related road. This will not fix what is currently being done in the county commission. So it has to be more specific language if you're trying to fix what you perceive as a problem or what we're talking about. One of the things that was brought up in the discussion is that we didn't want special projects or any full-barrel kind of situation happening with year-end funding. So it's trying to correct that. In addition, there was a discussion about debt service, which this says nothing about how these funds could be used to service debt, which is obviously something that is extremely important. As you pointed out, there was a mere $750,000 going to debt service with that kind of surplus. That seems out of kilter to me, having been served on the board trying to service debt. And this question doesn't fix that. And that's what needs to be fixed, that we are using funds appropriately and, maybe not appropriately, but effectively to solve what potentially could be a problem. And that is debt and the idea that roads are not being funded at the level that they need to. So this question doesn't solve either one of those problems because it's simply saying the budget for the following fiscal year. And I'm afraid what is going to happen is exactly what's been happening, as Mr. Williams outlined. So I don't see it being any different than what is being done now in the way that it's worded. It has to be a little bit more specific as to what we are trying to address. So I would say, no, let's not forward this on in its current language. Not that it's something that's not needed to address the issues that, as I outlined, but this won't do it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Chair,
Ma'am?
I just wanted to let you all know that I was trying to listen to this on the laptop, and we can't hear any of you, except the last person who was speaking from this table when I came in. So you need to use your mic, because we can't hear you on screen, those of us who are listening outside this hall.
Thank you.
Toby Witt, Chairman of the Board of County Commissioners. You swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth? I do. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I do understand your concerns in why this was raised. I will tell you that most of everything Mr. Williams said was correct, that when Mr. Keith, when you look at these projects, you look at 13 million over 3 years or whatever it was, that's roughly 4 million a year. Some of that's restricted, some of that isn't. When you look at capital projects, most of those are roads. There are some community center upgrades and things like that those facilities need and want that we don't budget. We haven't budgeted at the beginning of the cycle because it was kind of it's not really a true, need. It's a want. Yeah, we need to fix these things, but if the budget's lean, they can wait a couple of years. So the idea was to put them off to the end of the year and see how much money was there. And then, hey, if we can address it, we can. This is going to change the way we do things, but understand that right now, everything at the end of the year that is excess money goes through a budget process, through a budget amendment. It comes to the whole Board of County Commissioners as a budget amendment. It is publicly advertised. It is debated, just like the budget when we do the budget process. What this is going to do, and it's really not going to, it's going to change it in this way. And instead of doing these projects at the end of the year, and we're going to actually debate them probably in the budget process, closer to when we know how much money we have, and do them in a future time. But we're still going to use year-end money, to go toward roads, because we have taken a big step toward roads, because we now do budget, $2.8 million of a dedicated line item in the budget for roads to try to correct some of this. But that's not enough to overcome the deficit. You still have to overcome the deficit. Now, debt service and all these other things are important, and we do look at debt service, and we do want to be conservative and pay that down. But you elect the county commissioners to make those decisions year after year based on what's going on that year. Some years it may not be smart to pay debt service down. Some years it may be smarter to put more in roads. Some years you may have a project that needs that funding. But that's why you elect us. It's not the role of the charter to tie an elected board's hands as to how they spend money. That's the role of the people who put us in office. So, I'm not opposed to this. You're going to get it. It may make it more transparent because this will go in the actual budget process and not at the end of the year. But understand that this money is going through a budget process right now. It is. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask him a question, Mr. Mayor? Mr. Chairman? Mr. Witt?
Mr. Witt,
Yes.
What would be wrong with using the end of the year funds into the next budget cycle?
That's exactly what will happen if this passes.
I understand. I'm asking what would be wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it.
Okay.
I'm just letting you know that it's going through a budget process now. If this passes, it's going to go through a budget process. We're still going to decide as a board the best way to spend this surplus money. And yes, some of it will go to debt.
Some of it will go to roads, because obviously roads is a big concern, and we never have enough to overcome that deficit. So, but that is the decision of the elected board, to how that money's spent. Now, where that happens in the process, to me, is irrelevant. You got a budget process that goes on now. You got a budget. If this passes, it'll still happen in a budget process. It'll just be at a different time. So, I'm here nor there with it.
What do you mean at a different time?
Well, right, if this money is surplus at the end of the year, then we're still gonna have to decide what to do with it. Now, that might be moved to the next year's funds in that budget process.
So you do the budget in the fall, in the spring, right?
Yes.
So when do you know that this money is, what excess money you're gonna have?
But the closer,
November?
the closer you get to the end of the budget cycle, and it ends in October, the better you would know.
Okay.
So,
So then you start deciding how your budget's gonna work in 6 months though?
we start the budget process, we've already started it
Okay.
right now for next year. So our estimates may not be accurate on what we have, and what we're not gonna have. So now, this may carry over into a next year's budget process, but you still have to budget that money, whether it's done budget process or whether you do it as it's being done now and it comes up as a budget amendment. But everything we spend is public noticed and is budgeted.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, comment, please.
Yes, sir.
I just want to address Commissioner Williams and Commissioner Witt's concerns.
Point of order. The public hearing still on?
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We haven't gotten to this point yet, but this is all just testimony from the public. The discussion points and trying to hash out different things will be for y'all's board discussion. Unless you have a question.
No.
Okay.
All right. The hearing being open, and anyone else wishing to speak on this from the public? The hearing being open and seeing no one who wishes to speak for or against this matter, I declare the public hearing closed. Will there be any comment, discussion, or debate from the commission before we go to the motion?
I'd like to make one.
Mr. Owens, you're recognized.
When we went through this process, I was on the committee, and it was explained to us by county staff that it was the method of our county, the way they had done it in the past is excuse me, I have one right here. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. That they intentionally wanted to have excess funds at the end of the year in order to do capital projects. That didn't seem like a good accounting practice. I realize that it might be convenient, but it does give the avenue to do projects with special meanings to county commissioners at that point in time. It just seemed to us that it'd be a lot better idea for those things to be budgeted through the entire process. Mr. Witt actually made the case for us in his comments as to what we were going for. That's exactly what we wanted. We wanted it to go through the entire budget process, and we wanted the county commission to do a better. We were never trying to stop roads being funded. We were all for that, but we wanted it to be in the budget process as you go through. But when you look at overages of $7 million, that's a lot of money. I know we can budget closer than that. So that's what we were trying to alleviate. We weren't trying to stop money from going to roads at all. We wanted to go to roads. That's great. But we wanted to go through the budget process and be budgeted for that very purpose. That was what we were trying to achieve.
Mr. Stevens, you had a comment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Witt and Commissioner Williams, when we were discussing this excess funds, and it's been millions and millions of dollars of excess funds each year for several years out. And we were very sensitive to not want to tie the Board of County Commissioners' hands to tell them what those excess funds need to go towards, whether it be roads, capital projects, debt service. We were very sensitive to that. But what our intent is, and I firmly believe this is the direction that we need to go, is just like Commissioner Witt says, it's all about this transparency. If it gets rolled back and you guys budget excess funds, that's what we want done. And that is our intent. And if that's being done, then this shouldn't be a problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other discussion or comment from the board before we go to a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Keith?
I too have concern with the ballot question. It was under my understanding that we would have an exception in there for possibly debt service. Obviously, we could look at roads too, but I'm looking at the actual county information for the 3 years, and even in the transportation trust fund, we're showing 1.3 million in 19 for roads, 1.2 million also in 19. And then 17, it shows 2 capital projects. How are you separating it? If capital projects are sometimes roads, then why would you have two sections with roads and 2 with capital projects? What kind of capital project would come out of transportation trust?
The hearing portion is closed, so if there's any other questions, this is just for discussion among the board right now.
You know, gentlemen, I think, and ladies on the board, I think when you're getting down to that needs to be, in my humble opinion, items like that is when the budget is when they're having their budget, the commissioners have their budget meetings, that's when that needs to be brought up for the transparency to say, hey, how you doing? The committee met, it used the information provided, it followed, just as anybody that can read it, it says there, this was, capital project, quote unquote, and this was for roads. Again, we need to, in my humble opinion, we need to stay focused on what we're trying to do with this item, work it through the system. If there's an improvement that needs to be made on it, we can do that. And what's being done, the specific aspects of the budget, I think that needs to be addressed when the commission holds its budgets meeting.
Well, and like Mr. Wood said, all monies are budgeted. We get that.
Right, sir.
But when we look at how it was budgeted, not very much went to roads.
It's not our job.
Even in the general budget, it's only showing 810,000 of the 10 million went to roads.
Right.
So, and then transportation trust, I'm not sure, what the difference between a road and a capital project is. Is that a bridge repair or something? I don't know. I'm curious.
Like I say,
If we can get a little more
Mr. Chairman.
information on that.
right.
It seems like we're having it's caused quite a bit of confusion on what we're talking about here. And if it's this confusing to us, I think we either need to change this or just vote it out of going to the ballot.
Mr.
Chairman,
Mr. Stevens?
maybe,
Mr. Bowden, I'm sorry, sir.
I guess it's for for the attorney. Can the language in the question be changed?
Yes, sir.
That can be amended.
Yes, sir.
So for Mr. Keith then, you said you had a problem with the language, what would you suggest?
Well, you could have it, it'd be transferred to the next fiscal year, but you could also have the exception of debt service or transportation trust fund. Put it in road. If that's the intention, when you're doing the secondary budget with year-end funds, put it in the road. It didn't go in the 3 years that we looked at.
Mr. Chair.
And then, and Charlie, then we're starting to act like elected county commissioners. We're not telling them where to spend it or how to spend it, but we're just setting up a mechanism of what to do with excess surplus funds, which is the title of the question. And I disagree with Mr. Jeremy. I think this is, I was on that committee, and this is the language. The debt service was addressed on a previous occasion, Charlie, and the commission, the CRC voted to take that language out. Because that would then be instructing the commissioners, you have to spend it for debt service. That's their decision. They're the elected commissioners.
Ms. Skinner, you have a question?
Attorney Foreman, just for clarification for this board, we cannot set the budget. Only the county commissioners can set the budget. Is that correct? And we can't tell them that this needs to be this line item and that line item. Am I correct or incorrect?
Yes, ma'am, you are correct.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. O'Neill?
I think that Mr. Williams had a good statement early on. We deal a lot in the public life, and when you have departments and not so much county level, but when you're state, federal, if they have a budget and it's gonna go away and they can't do anything, they can't carry it over, they're spending. And so I really think that probably in the end, from what I can hear, that it's better left to the county commission to make those decisions during the year. Now, if discussion creates a order of importance, then so be it. But I think that what I hear makes sense for staying with the county commissioners making the decision.
Well, to my understanding, it was not, the committee did not meet to say what item, how much money goes in each particular pot or item on the budget, but that the budget process, that the money would go through a process of which to where it would be used. We're not, I don't think the CRC or the finance committee is trying to take away any guidance that the county commissioners utilize where to spend it. We're not here to tell you how to spend it. We're just saying that through what we're looking at and what the committee saw was that there was a lot of unknown of where the money went. And what we're not trying to tell you, I think, how to spend it, but that there should be a process of which it goes through to be spent. The public hearing's closed, sir. Any other discussion from the board?
I'll make a motion to move this forward.
I'll second it.
Have a motion from Mr. Owens to move this item forward to the next public hearing. Have a second by Mr. Autumn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, ma'am. The next item is 2020 CRC-F as in Foxtrot 2, contract for annual audit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The title of the ordinance is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Columbia County, Florida, amending the Home Rule Charter of Columbia County, Florida, amending Article 5, adopting Section 5.2 to be entitled Private Sector Auditors, providing for a ballot question to be posed to the Columbia County electorate at the general election on November 3rd, 2020, providing for the ballot question form, providing for further authorization, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. The ballot question would read as follows, titled Private Sector Auditors. Question, shall the Home Rule Charter of Columbia County, Florida be amended to limit the length of any contract with an auditor or auditing firm to no more than 5 consecutive years? Yes for approval, no for rejection. That's all, Mr. Chair.
I now declare the public hearing on this item open. Will there be anyone to speak for or against this item? If so, please come forward at this time. If you would, state your name and your address, sir, and wait to be sworn in.
Sure, it's Richard Powell. I think my home address 178 Northwest Otter Court, Lake City.
Mr. Powell, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
It is. Okay, I prepared 15 minutes, but I'll try to do it in 3. I'm speaking against this proposed amendment for 3 basic reasons. The first being it will guarantee additional costs to the county. And information that the committee may have not had. There are currently 7 firms across the state that perform 85% of all county audits. Our firm's one of them. We do 5, and we're by far the smallest. The rest are large multi-office firms with no operations in Columbia County. You like to enhance competition, but because of the makeup of other firms in Columbia County and the nature of the time requirement, the skill requirement, the time frame, you cannot work on a county audit if you do taxes for people. You do their W-2s because you're doing it at the same time. Now, our firm has 8 auditors that work year-round, and it takes about 5 or 6 of them at the same time to complete the county audit. So, and for that reason, we don't do any taxes. So I'm not saying we're any better than other firms. It's a specialty that you have to have. You have to have all of your continuing education and government auditing. You have to have liability insurance at very high levels. You have to have a peer review that's very expensive. Your work is scrutinized at multiple levels. Uh, So this reality and the fact that the ranking criteria, all governmental audits are done on RFPs, and there's ranking criteria. The biggest criteria are experience and capability. And so it'll be, I promise you that the next audit firm for Columbia County, if we're not allowed to participate in it, will be one of those other 6 firms that are multi-office, large firms that charge a lot more money than we do. How do I know this? Because that's my life. I know from bidding on county audits throughout the state. For example, I'll give you an exact example. The fee for Columbia County was $123,000 last year. The closest county to Columbia is Nassau. Population demographics, their fee was $177,000. Currently, Glades County, which is the 4th smallest county in the state, has an RFP out for audit services. Their fee they paid last year was $134,000. The closest county we do to that is Dixie County. Their fee was $75,000. So there's about a $50,000 to $60,000 range in what big firms charge and what we charge. So if we're not allowed to participate in the process, the other 6 firms will have no incentive or reason to lower their fee below what they charge everywhere else. And the way county audit fees work, once the fee is taken up to adding $50,000 or $60,000 to it, it'll be that way forever, because the next year, the next audit firm will base their bid on what the last year was. So it's going to cost Columbia County more if we are not, if this restrictive provision is enacted. Also, what is it doing? Infringes on the statutory duties of constitutional officers. Florida statutes provide for an audit selection committee comprised of 5 elected county constitutional officers, elected chairman of the board, who solicit bids, who rank proposals, who select the auditor. If you enact this, you are infringing on their duties and on what they're supposed to, what Florida statute said they're supposed to do. In this next round, there's going to be at least 3 new constitutional officers. And so who knows what they will decide, but they're elected and they'll decide what they elect. The last time the county audit was bid, the ranking was very close, and we were, while we were the only local firm bidding on it, it was not just a shoe-in, it was not close. Fresh eyes concept. There's also a false conception that I personally do the county audit work and I do everything, and so you need to replace me because you need fresh eyes. Now, if I did the whole county audit work, I need to go see Dr. Foreman if he were still practicing for newer contacts. But our office, all we do is government nonprofit audits. I spend all of my time mainly supervising staff, reviewing reports, but I always try to deliver every audit to a governing board. And I think I've delivered every county audit for as long as we've been doing them, because I want to make sure that the board, governing board, understands what that 300 pages means. There's always rotation on our staff. We always practice it anyway. And then also, Columbia County is a good example. Once we have really experienced auditors, our clients hire them. So we have new people coming in. I read the committee proposal, and they relied on a document of the, it's called best practices audit procurement of the Government Finance Officers Association, which is a very good organization, which I think I'm still a member of, or usually a member of. And you took one sentence out of it. It's on page 119 of your agenda packet. It says the government entities should enter into multi-year agreements of at least 5 years in duration when obtaining the services of independent auditors. The next paragraph, however, which isn't included, says governmental entities should undertake a full-scale competitive process for the selection of independent auditors at the end of the term of each audit contract, consistent with applicable legal requirements, Florida statutes, the policy of the board. While there is some belief that auditor independence is enhanced by a policy requiring that the independent audit firm be replaced at the end of each multi-year agreement, unfortunately, the frequent lack of competition among audit firms fully qualified to perform public sector audits could make a policy of mandatory audit rotation counterproductive. That kind of means expensive. In such cases, it is recommended that a governmental entity actively seek the participation of all qualified firms, including the current auditors, assuming that the past performance of the current auditors has been proven satisfactory. Where audit firm retention does not result from this process, governments may consider requesting that senior engagement staff, such as engagement partners and senior managers, be rotated to provide a fresh perspective. So I ask you humbly to reconsider this proposal because the unintended consequences, mainly financial, I say will outweigh any benefits to the county. Again, a county audit that we do is a financial audit. It's highly governed by professional standard rules of the Auditor General, and every engagement letter and scope of audit that you receive from any audit firm will be the same as the one we've given every year. There.
Thank you, sir. Any other comment from the citizens on this?
Oh, and also if I can make one more thing. I should have said that after I read the ballot question, I should be very happy with it because it's either misleading or else it's intended to allow the same audit firm to have consecutive 5-year contracts.
Thank you, sir.
Toby Witt, Chairman of the Board of County Commissioners, and the attorney assures me I'm still sworn in. I will tell you that I understand why this was brought out too. I shared your concern on this when I was a candidate, and until recently, I was the county commissioner as chairman who participated in the audit process this year, and I did not know about the fresh eyes concept because although the concern is that by using the same auditing firm every year, we're getting the same audits, the same person's audited. We get a different auditor every year. She's independent. He or she's independent. They're not answering to him as to how the audit comes out. So you get fresh eyes every year. The other concern I have is when you learn about the lack of competition, as he mentioned, and you also learn that this firm's local jobs, money stays local. I think that's very important. But they also have the background information done. They don't have to come and start from scratch. So you're not going to tell me that if you replace him in 5 years and you bring in an outside firm who's never worked with Columbia County, that price is going to be higher because this firm has the background information. So you're already getting fresh eyes every year. You're getting it at a lower cost, I believe. And I just don't think we should tie the board and the constitutional officers' hands into doing this, even when the governing body from the state recommends you keep them for at least 5 years, the minimum 5 years. So that tells me it's in your advantage if you got a good firm like this to go more than 5 years. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I, have been on this board as long as Dick been auditor. And, I remember the first audit review that I had, when I became a county commissioner. I think it was somewhere about a 3. I mean, it was bad. And the board was we was just taking over from the county administrative form of government back to what we have now. If you've been in Columbia County a long time, you remember the Jim Brantley days back when Rodney Dix and all those guys was county commissioner. They went to a administrative form of government. And I never forget, somewhere around 84, this county was in bad shape financially. And Dick presented the audit, and again, it was a bad audit. Everybody, all the constitution officers, not only the Board of County Commissioners, everybody. And I remember this chart that he put up and said, board, and he gave us this advice to the Board of County Commissioners. Never forget, he had this, like yesterday, he had a chart there and said, if you all do A, B, C, and D, and you do this and this and this, Columbia County would be one of the best financial counties in the state of Florida if you follow this chart. Years later, we are still one of the best financial counties in the state of Florida. We haven't reached that 10. For 40 years, I have asked them, after he presented his audit, what do we rank from 1 to 10? The highest ranking we've gotten is 9.5. 3 years in a row with no finding. Things that you got concerns about, you can go right here in Lakeside to someone that pay taxes, born and reared in this area, and get an answer to it. We follow what the statute says now, in a sense of speaking. We're doing it by statute. And now this is one time that I can truly say, if it ain't broke, you ain't got to be fixed. Because this audit process that this board goes through with other constitutional officers, it's not broke, period.
Thank you.
Sir.
Mr. Rich said some of what I want to say about the jobs and being local. You know, we're all asked, especially county commissioners, people please buy local because it supports our tax base. Well, the people that work in Columbia County for his firm pays taxes here. And I'm a firm believer that if somebody is doing an outstanding job, why is that we need to limit their contribution? We should not be doing that, but that's just opposite of what we ought to do. We should never let a homegrown fellow who is down and doing an outstanding job not be part of the process. Why close the current house? As a school board member for 12 years, we use POW accounting, and we've always had outstanding audit. Not one time that we have a problem with the audit. So I think we would be doing an injustice to not allow him to be one of the people who are actually going to be bidding on the RFP and the district loan. So I just think that we ought not to do this for the sake of allowing everyone to have a chance of participating in a bidding process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment at the public hearing time? The hearing being open and seeing no one who wishes to speak for or against this matter, I declare the public hearing closed. Will there be any comment, discussion, or debate from the commission before we go to the motion? Mr. Beaver, you recognize?
I agree with the commissioner and the auditor. I looked at it today, with Commissioner Williams and Congressman Fix, and I just don't see any reason that we should put any type of limit on the auditor that I think we could well, even if it's in the county, they're local, you know, that anyone that cares about the care about the issue, that's something that so I involved all the years that they've been the auditor, and they've been showing that they audited, on that. Then you're gonna end up having a problem later on, 5 years or up, and then have somebody that.
Any other comment, any other discussion on the board? Ms. Smith?
I apologize, I did not have the research done on this question until today. However, I don't understand why this issue came up. I agree also that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And buy local, shop local, support local. We can't be saying one thing in an economic development area and then another thing when it comes to setting up our financial and auditing history. Unless you all know something or privy to some information that I did not have in my package, I don't know why this was ever generated as an issue.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. O'Neill?
Mr. Chairman, I firmly believe that this was not a place we should never relate to anybody that's the job. I just don't think
Any other discussion, Mr. Foreman?
Yeah, I think the committee's intent was not to question the capability of how accounting firm, I think it was just to bring some fresh eyes, but your testimony, Richard, enlightened me as to the format that you utilize to do the county audit. It's not done by Richard Powell, it's done by a teamwork approach. So I would agree with Mr. O'Neill that perhaps in hindsight, this appears to be counterproductive.
Make a motion to strike this.
Second.
Any other? I have a motion by Mr. Germany to strike this. I have a second by Mr. Foreman. Any other discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I agree with, I agree with, most of the comments have been made. I do take a little bit of exception with, how we got it. Just keep in mind, we didn't get all of us going to a different point. Recognizing that, we need to accept the fact that we're doing hindsight. It's not as if this was 8 to 7 votes. It's maybe just because all of us agreed with it at the time. So as heard from Mr. Foreman and Commissioner, it makes sense now in hindsight, not the restrictions to those reviews, but it's not as if we were in this building, we just didn't have all the
Any other discussion? We have a motion to strike this. I have a second. All in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Owen? One opposed. That was opposed too.
You opposed to?
Yes.
No, Mr. Owens and Mr. Mr. Chair, that concludes the items for public hearing for this evening. The next meeting will be substantially identical to the one we just had, with the exception of the last issue. Your agendas will also look substantially identical. July 1st, 2020, 6 o'clock p.m. at this location.
Have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Thank you.